All right, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Just want to say a quick thank you to all of the people attending this morning. The webinar, the theme is how new AI functionality is getting priced, and we are more than beyond thrilled to have you all here with us as Impact Pricing's Mark Stiving and Ibbaka's Stephen Forth take us on a little bit of a deep dive into the fascinating and rapidly evolving world around generative AI in B2B software and pricing. So before we start the discussion, I'm just going to remind everyone that we will be sending the recorded webinar post-webinar to everyone's inbox. The webinar recording will also have a couple of additional valuable resources, which is the newly announced Ibbaka Net Revenue Retention Diagnostic Service and Toolkit Hub. These are 4 easy steps to help you measure and improve your NRR, as well as the Generative AI Pricing Guide, the deck that you will be witnessing today. And if your screen or monitor starts shooting out sparks or smoke, don't worry, it's not your AI in the computer malfunctioning. It's just this combination of awesome pricing minds and experts of Mark and Stephen for this wicked webinar today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mark and then Stephen. So thanks again and hope you enjoy the webinar.
Thanks, Liam. I'm not sure who wrote that introduction, but it was amazing.
I was just doing a little bit of a joke.
So hopefully most of you have seen my content out there before. I run Impact Pricing. I am not an expert on AI the way Stephen is an expert on AI, but Stephen and I seem to talk about it all the time. And so I challenge him constantly on, does this really apply? Does this not apply? And that's going to be my role today, is we're going to let Stephen be the expert. And I'm going to talk about how this really applies to pricing, or does it apply to pricing? But I do want to start off with one quick comment. This morning, I got on ChatGPT and I asked ChatGPT, how do you price AI products? And can I just tell you, they're clueless. So whatever Stephen says is way better than what you're going to get from AI. So Stephen, you.
Well, I just want us to remember, Mark, the definition of an expert, right? So an X is an old has-been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So what does that make an expert? So we should be careful when we claim to be experts at anything. I just want to start by thanking Mark for joining us, and also thanking Mark for all his many and varied contributions to the world of pricing and the pricing community. The podcasts, the books, the training, the generous sharing of ideas. I think all of us really appreciate that. Just a couple of notes. Many people think of pricing as being data-driven. At Ibbaka, we think of it as being model-driven. So a lot of my time is spent building value models, constructing packaging, and designing pricing for B2B SaaS in order for them to drive higher growth, drive revenues, and get a better NRR. As part of this, I lead Ibbaka's research into applications of generative AI to value and pricing. And I also lead the rather large design thinking group on LinkedIn, where generative AI is perhaps the main thread of conversation over the last year, because, of course, many people in the design world feel threatened. But we thought we'd start by just sharing what we see as the basic assumptions that we have about what's happening, so that we have some common ground for our discussion today. So many of you will remember back in 2011, Mark Andreessen said that software is eating the world. Today, I think it's fair to say that AI is eating software, and that AI is becoming the platform. One of the results of this is a profound change in cost structure, and a profound change to how we design user experience and how we interact with all sorts of applications. This is going to change how we manage solution and configurations, and that in itself will change how we need to think about pricing. But Mark, does this flow tell us anything useful?
So I find this flow fascinating, but I'm going to bring up the topic that I think you and I challenge each other on a lot. And that is, I think of AI as a new technology, not changing the world, right? So if we were to think about technologies that we think are these amazingly innovative technologies, let's start with the wheel, right? Obviously, the wheel changed the world, but not every product uses the wheel. And so we've got the internet, we've got SaaS, we've got blockchain. We have all these things that we say, hey, this changed the world, but it didn't, right? It changed a lot of the world, but it didn't change the whole world. I often think that we are overhyping AI today, and we think it's going to change everything. It's going to change a lot, there's no doubt. But I don't think it's going to do everything. And so that's probably the perspective I'm going to go with this. But I want to answer your second question: how fast is this happening? I could say that the fear that I see among people who aren't adopting AI is so huge that this is going to happen much faster than any other technology we've ever seen.
So I'm going to push back a bit, Mark, because I think that transformer-based models and deep learning and transformer-based models in particular are a order of magnitude different than anything that the software and internet industry has seen before. They are at least the equivalent of the invention and distribution of the printing press and the printed word, and I suspect more akin to the emergence of writing as a technology. And I think it's going to be that pervasive. It's going to take time for the implications to cascade through. But as I'll quote later on, as Vancouver science fiction writer Bill Gibson has said, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. But why don't we go on and take a look at what some people are actually doing? So during our talk today, we're going to look at some examples. We're going to talk about what we're seeing in the present, and then we're going to cast our eye forward into the future. But before we do that, we just wanted to see, for the people on the call, how are you developing AI? What kind of products are you taking to market? So why don't we have a quick poll here? Thank you, Liam.
Stephen, you want to say a quick word about each one of those options, just so people understand what we're asking?
Sure. So people are doing a lot of innovation around AI. I think the last number I saw is that about 80% of B2B SaaS companies have some form of AI-based innovation happening. But you can do that in many different ways. You can be building an underlying AI infrastructure. You can be adding in a functional platform with many cross-the-road capabilities. You may just be building an AI module that's sort of separate from your current offer, but you're delivering an AI module. Or you may be using AI to enhance the current software and current packages that you're taking to market. Or it could be none of the above.
Yeah, in each one of these, we're really talking about products that we're building to sell to the market, not how are we using AI inside our company to make ourselves more efficient.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
All right, some more are still slowly coming in.
But AI moves fast, Liam, so let's not give the laggards too much time.
Okay, I'm gonna call it.
Interesting. Okay, this is I think fairly well aligned with what we are seeing in our other surveys and tools. The difference here is that more people are building a functional platform with many capabilities, and that may reflect an important shift that we're seeing in the market. So I think that was interesting. I close this though. And let's go on and talk about examples. We're going to talk about 5 different examples here: HubSpot, Salesforce, Totogi, Synthetic Users, and Intercom. So I think I imagine most people on this this call know HubSpot. HubSpot has been making a lot of investment into AI. They have a pretty aggressive AI roadmap, but in many ways they're taking a very conventional approach, and layering AI in really across their existing platform. So they're a company that is using AI to enhance what they've already been doing. But because of that, they've had to do some thinking about their pricing, and in a way simplify it. So move to seat-based pricing for all subscription tiers. I have to say I'm not a huge fan of the general adoption of seat-based pricing. But HubSpot found this was the best common denominator, and they have some good principles here that we all should be thinking about. Start for free and scale, pay as you grow, connect teams, and drive effectiveness. I don't think this is specific to AI, but those are actually some pretty good principles in designing a pricing model. Salesforce, which is really a HubSpot competitor, is taking a much more transformative approach with their Einstein platform that enables a wide range of functionality. So they're much more taking a platform strategy, and their pricing is, I'm not going to say aggressive, but it is, definitely premium pricing. Most of the sort of generic generative AI applications are priced, I say here 20 to 25, but I think that when I did some research last night, it's probably more like 15 to 20 now. So there's some downward pressure on this pricing. Salesforce is taking a premium approach that reflects the value that can be created. Totogi, I think, is an example, though, of something that's fundamentally different. So Totogi, most of you will not know Totogi because it operates in a much narrower market. It's a digital BSS, and BSSs are the operating layer for companies that it's the operating layer for the mobile virtual networks. So it enables a telco or anyone else for that matter to stand up a mobile virtual network. Now, 5 years ago, when I first started thinking about this market, it took 18 to 24 months to configure and implement one of these systems. Over the last 3 years, we've seen new entries come in with modular products and modular approaches that can cut that time to 3 to 6 months. Totogi says that it can generate and configure a BSS for you in minutes. So that is a profound difference. And since many of us here on the call are pricers, think of what that means to you. If your system can be configured in 3 to 6 months, you probably have at least a couple of days to come up with a price. But if the system can be configured in minutes, your pricing has to be as responsive, as the system itself. You don't have the time that you used to do. I don't think this leads to dynamic pricing, by the way. I think dynamic pricing is something else, but maybe, Mark, that's something you can challenge me on. Another super interesting company here is Synthetic Users. Synthetic Users creates AI-generated chatbots or users that you can use to do user research on. Super interesting approach, very disruptive for the user research industry. And their pricing is very much value-based, and the pricing metric is the number of synthetic users created. Interesting, thing to think about. And also imagine a world in which some of those synthetic users could become your customers. Finally, Intercom. If you're as old as Mark and I, you will remember Intercom as a major content management system for the first generation of the web. It's transformed. It is now a customer service solution and an AI-powered customer service solution. So when you look at this looks like a pretty simple, AI-enhanced strategy. Nothing good for them, nothing particular interesting here. But when you go on to look at their FinAI application, so FinAI powers it's a way to power your a chat bot, and they are charging per resolution. So for many years, people in pricing have been talking about outcomes-based pricing. There's been a lot of resistance to it. There's also been speculation that AI will allow it to take place, and I think we're seeing an early example of that with Intercom and how it's pricing FinAI. Mark, thoughts?
Oh my gosh, way too many thoughts here. So first off, I'm going to tell you, Stephen, there was absolutely nothing new there. I know how much you're going to hate me for saying that. So if you think about the 5 examples you gave us, and I love every one of them, each one of them is solving a problem for a customer. And when we think about pricing, what do we always do? Is we go back and we say, what problems do we solve for customers? What's the value of solving that problem? And now can we price that accordingly? And so you think about HubSpot and Salesforce, we know exactly what problems they're solving. They're amazing at it. And they're using new technologies to solve better problems better. And they're charging more money for it. Awesome. I mean, that's exactly what you would expect to have happen. Totogi, again, they're solving a huge problem that exists in the world. They're doing it better and much, much faster for their marketplace. And so, of course, they're going to get paid better for that. We think about Intercom. I love the idea that they're able to move closer to outcome-based pricing. We've seen that in other technologies as well. So Google used to sell ads by headlines, right? You remember when we had banner ads? And then they went to per click, which is closer to the outcome. So yeah, we're seeing companies move closer to outcome-based pricing when they can, and we have to love that. And if AI gives us that ability, excellent, right? In every single one of these cases, what we're doing is we're still solving problems and charging based on the value that we're delivering to our customers. So this reminds me a ton of, early 2000s. There were tons of papers and books about the economics of the digital economy, and economic theory didn't change. It was just the assumptions and the things that went around it. And so pricing theory here isn't changing. It's just the products and the things we're capable of that's changing rapidly.
I think that's fair, Mark. So I have to ask, you've developed Pricing GPT. How are you going to approach pricing that?
I have no idea. So I built Pricing GPT more as an experiment to see what happens, how you do it, why you do it. If you ask ChatGPT questions, it gives you sometimes they give you cost plus answers, which, you and I hate that answer. I mean, there's a few times where it makes sense, but most of the time it doesn't. And so what I tried to do with Pricing GPT was to say, look, I want you to use all of my content first when you answer a question. And then here's a list of experts that I trust and like. If I don't give you the answer, I want you to go to this set of experts next. Now, I still don't think it's great, but I think it's better than going straight to ChatGPT. And we're essentially crafting this. Now, how am I going to price it? First off, ChatGPT doesn't allow me to sell it, but someday we might be able to, and I'll have to figure out what's the value and who gets value, just like anybody else would price any other product.
So a quick aside here, Mark. First, congratulations on doing this. I think it's a fantastic thing that you've done here. And I'm going to just suggest to all of us that in the not too distant future, all of us will have our own language model that we've trained to our own interests. So there will be Liam's language model and Dick Sobel's language model. And, I'm already training up a language model for my own personal interests. And if you go to Hugging Face, which is a super interesting place to keep current on AI, the last time I checked, I think there were over 600,000 models available on Hugging Face. Now, I'm sure that, 555,000 of them are useless. Maybe that's harsh, but still, there are far more language models out there than most of us are aware of, and there are dozens, if not hundreds, being created every day.
Yeah, and I have to say, in all honesty, it's not that hard to create it. What was hard was to figure out how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's just going to get easier. But let's go on and talk about what we're seeing in the market today. So, pricing AI is a very broad topic. So we find it's helpful to have a bit of a structure to think about here. And different things are getting priced in different ways. So at the center of this are the models. This is what OpenAI and Anthropic and Mistral and Google Gemini and Meta Llama are. And the models are being priced in a fairly conventional way. I don't think most of the people on this call are building large language models, so we're not going to talk too much about that. Supporting the models are data and tools, and we'll come back to data in a moment. Then a lot of the traditional IT ops companies are coming out with AI ops platforms that manage the workflows. Down at the bottom, we have the AWS and the other infrastructure companies, NVIDIA. I'm not sure if everyone followed NVIDIA's stock price yesterday, but it was kind of eye-popping. It reminded me of the old adage, during a gold rush, don't mine gold, mine miners. But most of us are over here on the far right, and we deal with the outcomes of all of this. So, many of our companies here have an opportunity with data and monetizing data. And, that's going to be interesting to follow. There's also a lot of court cases happening around this. OpenAI had an announcement of a deal with News Corp this morning. So there's a lot happening there. But really, for the purposes of this webinar, our focus is mostly on outcomes. Each of these different layers has its own way of pricing. Since we're focusing down at the bottom at the application vendors, what we're seeing is that there hasn't been that much change, really. Just before, we did a talk at the Professional Pricing Society in Chicago back in March. We did a LinkedIn poll, and we asked, what are people pricing? And it was sort of evenly split here between enhance current models and add a new AI model. There were some people building platforms and some people doing other things. And this is not too different from what we saw in the earlier poll. How they are pricing, about 40% of people were using their current metric. About 38% were using a new metric. And these are reasonable ends, by the way. 168 is not too bad for a LinkedIn poll. I'm not claiming that they're representative or scientific, but they're directionally interesting. About 38% of people were combining existing and new metrics, and a number of people were rebalancing. So that's where you take your current pricing structure, but you change the weights of different pricing factors within the structure. Back in October, November last year, we did a much larger survey. So the N here, I think, was just over 300. And, we found a big reliance on conventional models. Now, you may be saying, well, that was 6 months ago. The world is moving fast. But Kyle Poyer and Paul Broa did a post recently on Kyle's fantastic Growth Unhinged site, where they basically found the same thing. And Kyle and Paula made the provocative statement, lack of pricing innovation presents an opportunity for the second wave of AI apps. Mark, what do you think? Are you surprised that the pricing is conventional, or this was to be expected, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the same concept that I typically use, and that is the pricing theory hasn't changed. But what I think is changing pretty quickly is what are the value metrics that our customers are using to figure out how much value are we delivering? Because it's possible that we can deliver value in different ways than we used to be able to before. And so synthetic customers was a great example of, hey, I'm now delivering value in a very different way than I ever could before. But on the other hand, if we're going to add modules to our product or we're going to enhance our current product, it probably doesn't change the way we're delivering value to our customers. And so therefore it shouldn't change the pricing metrics we use, assuming that we've done a really smart job at picking those pricing metrics in the first place.
That's a big assumption.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But so I don't see AI itself driving it, but I think what you're about to show us is the thing that I find most insightful in this presentation.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's hard to disagree, Mark, that the fundamentals of pricing and how we think about pricing haven't changed. But I also think that there's been a bit of complacency, in how people are pricing. So I was really happy to see what Intercom has done with Fin AI. I'm really happy to see synthetic users, charging a reasonable amount. And interesting, we were talking to the CEO of synthetic users a couple of weeks ago, because we're looking at using synthetic user. We actually are a synthetic user subscriber. So full disclosure, Ibbaka is of those 5 companies, we are a HubSpot subscriber and a synthetic user subscriber. We don't have any plans to build a mobile virtual network. But we do want to do deeper user testing and see if we can actually use synthetic users to explore pricing questions. Haven't, just barely starting that. So I wouldn't say that the jury is still out. I would say that the trial is just beginning. But we need better ways to explore pricing, and I think synthetic users and synthetic data will be a big part of that. But let's move on.
Real quickly, I want to toss out one more thing, Stephen.
Yeah.
If AI and the implementation of AI gets people to rethink their pricing metrics, that in and of itself is a huge win.
Hear, hear. I will drink to that. It's a bit early to have anything other than caffeine, but okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the future. I think one of my favorite quotes is from Bill Gibson, who lives in my neighborhood. The future is here. It is just not evenly distributed. But to counter that, as the great scientist Niels Bohr said, prediction is hard, especially about the future. So with those caveats, let's dive in. And we think that one of the big changes that we are going to see over the next, I'm going to say 3 to 5 years, but this is happening fast, is that rather than AI being a module that gets stuck onto existing platforms or an enhancement to existing modules, AI itself is going to become the platform, and many companies are going to need to re-platform. So just as during the early ERP days, almost everyone re-platformed so that they were working off a relational database, and we don't even think about that anymore. Virtually everyone on this call, their company is going to need to re-platform so that AI itself becomes the platform. AI is also having a huge impact, or will have a huge impact on the cost structure. And I think it's worth dividing this into the impact on development and operations. So I've seen estimates by people like Tom Tungas at Theory Ventures that AI is going to reduce development costs by as much as 90%. I want to come back to that in a moment, but let's talk about operations costs. The other thing to understand is that compute costs are going to be much higher. When we've been pricing SaaS applications, we generally don't pay too much attention to the costs because the operating margins are so high. But that's changing. And we are predicting that operating margins for SaaS companies are going to go down significantly, and that will change how people think about margins and costs. And someone, when I was talking about this with someone last week, they said, well, Moore's Law will bring down those costs. Yes, probably, but Moore's Law operates across everything. So as costs go down for AI and compute, they'll go down even more for everything else. And finally, there's been a lot of speculation that conversational AIs and inference are going to significantly drop support costs. So just a couple of additional thoughts on this. First, on the dev costs going down, does that mean you'll be spending less on development? No, it doesn't. It means you'll be getting more value from the development you do. There's a concept in economics, a red queen game, comes from Alice Through the Looking Glass, where Alice complained that she was running very hard and she wasn't getting anywhere. And the red queen said, yes, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. If you want to get anywhere, you must run twice as fast as that. And I think that's what we're going to find on our dev teams, that they're going to make extensive use of AI. They already are. And they're going to get a lot more done, but there's going to be a lot more to do. And support costs go way down. So I think that this is true, but I also think that that's going to just shift the emphasis even more to being able to be a strategic partner to your customers and invest heavily in customer success. And there's going to be so much change over the next few years that the companies that can help their customers adapt to change are going to be the ones that succeed. So we just wanted to offer sort of a simple way of thinking about this. So if you are creating an enhancement, your existing value drivers are being enhanced. And as Mark said, if you've done your pricing correctly, you're probably going to rebalance your pricing, but you don't need to be adding new pricing drive factors or new pricing metrics. You're going to create new modules if new value drivers are being produced, and you're going to need to become a platform if multiple value drivers are being enabled. And then one last thought, and this is inspired in part by Totogi, but in part by what we're seeing at a number of other companies, is that we're going to see a major shift towards value-based configuration. So companies will have a swarm of components and microservices that they've developed. Many will be internal, but some might be from a larger ecosystem. They will have a methodology and probably software that will drive configuration, and it will drive configuration trying to solve for value to customer and price to provider. So what is going to these are going to be optimization systems based on finding the configuration for each customer situation that solves for that equation. And we'll have real-time solution configuration, which is going to require real-time pricing. So, Mark, is AI going to change pricing, and will pricing requirements change AI?
So the answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second question is I doubt it. So let me give you a little color in my thinking, if that's okay. How will AI change pricing? Again, we've said several times, I don't think it changes the theory of pricing or the way we approach pricing, but it certainly changes pricing levels. It absolutely changes the amount of value that we can deliver to our customers. And as long as we're always thinking about customer value, then yeah, we're going to price for value, and AI is going to allow us to change that pricing. So there's no doubt that's going to happen. So the second question, will pricing requirements change AI? And I was trying to think of an analogy that fit here, and I'm going to go to SaaS for just a second. So I think that pricing changed software in the following sense. Once we started pricing for subscriptions in the world of SaaS, and investors saw the valuations happening, and all of a sudden every software company said, hey, we have to go SaaS because we get a 10x valuation if we've got recurring revenue instead of one-time perpetual licenses. That truly changed what happened in the world of software. So do I think the same thing is going to happen in the world of AI? I don't see it, but I don't have the same visibility that other people do. So I would say I doubt it at this point. I mean, we see tons of technologies that pricing doesn't necessarily change that technology, but in this case, it might not. I really don't know.
So I think that the SaaS cloud comparison is a really compelling one, and it's worth thinking that through. And as you said, in large part, the Salesforce No Software campaign when they launched Salesforce was a pricing revolution. Just as Google AdWords and pay-per-click was a pricing revolution. I believe that there will be a pricing revolution attached to AI, and that it will be driven in part by this ability to do real-time configuration. Because I think what that's going to mean is that it allows us to explore more options. So right now, if you're configuring any sort of complex system, you're not going to look at very many of the possible options because it takes too much time, it's too expensive. But if all of a sudden, rather than looking at 2 or 3 different configurations, you can look at hundreds of different configurations, because all of those become possible, you need better ways to make decisions. And one of the ways that you're going to make decisions is through pricing, and especially the pricing value connection. I know I've articulated that very poorly, but I think that this is part of where things are going. At this point, I'd like to pause though. And Liam, are we getting questions in the chat or comments in the chat that we
Yeah,
want?
in the Q&A, we have a few at the moment, a couple in the chat, so feel free. I mean, we're 40 minutes in, totally up to you guys.
Liam, can you sort of share some of those? Let's start with the ones in the Q&A. What are
Yeah, so Peter C, he asked, how are you using AI? Do you also mean an AI-based feature or product that uses other ML architectures besides transformer-based models?
Great question. So so 2 thoughts on that, and Mark, jump in. We are primarily talking about transformer-based and generative AI. However, just as human intelligence is multifaceted, so is AI, and there are different flavors of AI. I'm sure many people noted that Google DeepMind released a new version of its protein folding software recently. So first, I think that we are going to see more and more applications that blend different forms of AI, and it's not just going to be transformer LLM based. We're going to see hybrid applications. One of the most interesting things, I think, for those of you who use Perplexity AI, go to the focus, and it allows you to focus on Wolfram Alpha. And for those of you who don't know it, Wolfram Alpha is a computational intelligence. So it's based on very different principles from transformative AI. And Stephen Wolfram, who is probably the smartest person I've ever met, has some interesting ideas on how you combine large language models with computational AIs. So that was a sort of long rambling answer, but Mark, any other thoughts there?
Yes, I think it doesn't matter. Given the approach I've taken through this whole webinar, what really matters is that we're adding fascinating, powerful new technologies to our products. That's what truly matters. So you could think about AI and machine learning has been in, if we think about our industry pricing, it's been in pricing systems for years now. So it isn't like AI is new. What's really new is the speed at which all of us are adopting it and terrified if we're not adopting it. And so I think it could be any technology. It just happens to be these large language models today are really on top of everybody's mind.
Liam, next question.
Yeah, Stephen. Will asked earlier, so you mentioned earlier, Stephen, that you're not much of a fan of seat-based pricing, and why is that? And if Mark, if you want to chime in, maybe you're a fan or not.
Well, that's a big topic. I'm pretty sure we must Mark probably has a dozen podcasts on that. I'll just say, I'll just answer that quickly, Mark, and then let you round up. For many applications, the number of seats does not correlate with how you are creating value. And your pricing metric should be based on how you create value. So for many applications, just having more users does not mean more value is being created. And seat-based pricing can actually reduce value creation. So unless value is directly correlated with the number of users, pricing based on the number of seats, A, does not track value, and B, can actually work against value creation.
That was an absolutely perfect answer. I'm not sure if everybody thinks of it this way, but seat-based pricing or user-based pricing is a pricing metric, and it is a decision that you have to make. And so you have to decide on your pricing metric. Most of us choose seat-based or user-based because that's what everybody else does. That was easy. That's what Salesforce did. Weren't they wildly successful? But as Stephen just pointed out, if it's not highly correlated with the value you're delivering to your customers, it's not the optimal pricing metric.
Another question we had, do you think democratized systems should be free or low cost?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. So there's going to be a lot of conversation about this. So let's just talk about large language models for the moment. So large language models are, I believe, a foundational part of the global knowledge infrastructure. And I think you can make a very strong argument that in order to have an equitable society, everyone needs to be able to have access. That this is like public education. We should teach everybody how to read and be flexible in how we do so. And large language models are like this, and that OpenAI's decision to close GPT is a decision that will come back to haunt them. And also the cost of developing these models. And some people think that we're nearing the apex of these models. I think we've just barely gotten started. But these are going to be incredibly expensive things to develop. We're going towards a world where I would guess that within the next decade, we are going to see models with 100 trillion parameters. So how is this going to get financed? Is this something that can or should be done by private companies, or is it a public good and resource? One of the deep questions that we're going to have to address, and there's going to be many points of view. Mark is a good Texan. You live in Texas, right?
I live in Nevada.
Nevada, well, even better. Sorry. You may have a very different point of view on this.
Yeah, so I have a really strong point of view, and that is that I never answer political questions. I believe my job is to help companies figure out how to make more money.
Fair enough. And that is a wise perspective in today's environment. But being a Canadian out here on the left coast, I'm happy to I'm happy to take those sorts of questions. Liam, I think we've got time for one or two more.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, both to Mark and Stephen. So considering the potential long-term impacts of generative AI on company valuations, how should B2B SaaS companies prepare for changes in investor expectations and market dynamics? What metrics should they prioritize to ensure sustained growth and attractiveness to investors in an AI-driven market?
Mark, do you want to take that first?
Do you know what I love about that question? Is it's so hard to answer. Here's what's happening, and I'm going to go back to AI is just a new technology. AI is just like SaaS or something like that. And so what's going to happen is that you as a company have to be continuing to make profit, continuing to sell product to a marketplace, And if you're not adopting AI and your competitors do and deliver more value more quickly, then you fall behind and you lose your valuations. And so the question is really all about, how do we maintain a competitive edge if everybody is going to ChatGPT or everybody's going to use AI and figuring out how they're going to add and deliver more solutions? I don't know what the metric is around the AI, but I guarantee you what truly matters is who's delivering more value to the customers and capturing that in price.
So that's a super interesting idea, Mark, and I want to come back to that. I have a couple of initial thoughts on this. One is that as many of you will be aware, the rule of 40 has sort of changed over the last, say, 6 months. So the rule of 40 is your profit margin plus your growth rate must be larger than 40 in order to attract investment. And over the last 6 to 12 months, the relative weight of those two has shifted so that more weight is being put on the margin part of the equation. And another one of the smartest people that I know in the tech industry, Jeff Hansen, has recently shared some data that show that the shift it's now roughly a 1.33 on profit margin and 0.67 on growth. That in itself is a huge shift for valuation metrics. But then now layer into that the fact that we believe that adoption of AI is going to push down profit margins. So two things are happening over the next few years. One is that there's more focus on profit margin by investors. And second, it's going to be more difficult to win that profit margin. And this is going to lead to a major recalibration of valuations. And it will be interesting to see how that works out. I also think that rather than the sort of singular focus on annual recurring revenue that we had in the past, what investors really care about is high margin predictable revenues. And ARR was a proxy for that. And with these generative AI applications, there will be more and different ways to generate high margin predictable revenues. And investors are going to get more sophisticated in how they think about this. So those are, I think, two profound changes. But I have long shared Mark's thought that what we should really be valuing companies on is their ability to build up a portfolio of very high LTV, so lifetime customer value, and that LTV should become a core metric for valuation. And LTV lifetime customer value needs to be based on the value that you are providing to customer, which at Ibbaka we like to refer to as V2C. And I would hope, this now becomes a bit aspirational and maybe even a bit self-serving, that value to customer will become a core metric that investors start looking at. We will, Mark and I are going to be having a follow-up podcast on these themes, and we will also try to answer additional questions in the blog. But I would like to go forward and just leave you with some next steps, things to do over, the next couple of weeks. The first thing is always look at what your customers are doing and look at how your customers are adopting AI. So go out and have conversations with your customers and understand what they are doing, what they're doing internally, what they're doing for their own products, and what they're doing personally. And then given that as context, and I think you'll find that this really expands your thinking about the possibilities. And the foundation of value-based pricing and value-based approaches is to always start with the customer. Then ask, how can you use AI to create value? And how does that reinforce what your customers are doing? But also ask how AI will impact your costs. And then for many of us, the adoption of AI could change our ideal customer profile, our ICP. So we are, I believe, going through a tectonic shift where who our customers are could change. Once you've come to a perspective on those first 4 points, then ask, what approach will you take to packaging? Are you going to build new modules? Are you going to enhance existing modules? Are you going to move to an AI platform? And with those changes, how will that impact your pricing metric? Do you need to change your pricing metrics so that they better track how you are sharing value with your customers? So those are the sort of key points that we wanted to cover today. Just a sort of few things to mention, as Liam mentioned at the beginning. Ibbaka has created a new offer of NRR diagnostic services, and these are available for free. And they include the opportunity to run your data through our new NRR Analyze application once. So we're happy to have conversations about that with you. And we have a couple of upcoming webinars. Karen Chang and Rashaka are going to do a peak span masterclass on measuring value. And Harp Dollywell will be giving a webinar, we believe, towards the end of June on a new revenue retention maturity model that we've been sharing with people. Lots of resources here. And I really encourage those of you who don't do it to follow Mark Stiving's podcast. It's the best podcast in pricing and one of the best podcasts in business. And he gets lots of people with lots of diverse perspectives. So encourage everyone to go to that. And I'm going to give Mark the last word.
Thank you, Stephen. And can you go back one more slide? Are you on 42? Go back to the question. There we go. I just want to say, first off, I love all 6 of these. These are great. But there are 2 of them that I think every one of us should be focused on really, really hard right now. And that's number 2, how do you use AI to create value? And what I would recommend is think about what is the value that you're delivering to your customers? And how is it that you can use AI to make that even better? What are those problems you're truly solving for them? And can you do that? And then the other one that I would focus really hard on is number 5, because I think number 5 is a very hard decision to make. How are we going to implement AI? And it's a huge decision that we have to make. So I would walk away saying, let's go really focus on those 2. All of them are important.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for everyone who came today. We appreciate the questions and comments in the chat. We will go through them all carefully and address them, and look forward to hearing from everyone soon. And I'm going to ask Mark to end us with the same way he ends his podcasts.
Now, go make an impact.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.